No surprise here, the United States Supreme Court 7-2 has grounded the planes for the Trump administration. They are not going to be able to use the Alien Enemies Act to deport people, whether with due process or not, to foreign prisons until the United States Supreme Court says so, until they get it back to them in the next several months to make an ultimate decision about whether the Alien Enemies Act has been properly used by Donald Trump, or is it a wag the dog, a phony creation of a war to put Donald Trump on war footing, to proclaim war where none exists, where we don't have predatory incursion by enemy combatants. That is a decision for the United States Supreme Court because the Supreme Court 7-2 says it is. And they are tired. You can tell from the 7-2 decision I'm going to read to you from. They are tired of Donald Trump stampeding them into making decisions by sending people in the middle of the night to prisons and then arguing, we can't get him back. We can't get Abrego Garcia back. We can't get the others back. We have no ability, and you have no jurisdiction to tell us to do that. They don't want to hear that ever again. Now, there was one dissent. There was two dissents, of course, Thomas and Alito. There was one concurrence that was very interesting, but for all the wrong reasons from Justice Kavanaugh. I'm going to break it all down for you right here on Legal AF Headline. For now, even though they haven't made a substantive ruling on whether the Alien Enemies Act was properly used, the Supreme Court 7-2 is not going to allow Donald Trump to use it for the time being. No more reporting about planes leaving in the middle of the night. No more, although there's still accidental deportations happening all the time with this administration, but that is going to be in violation of this Supreme Court injunction. This was an injunction hearing, not on the merits of the case. And that's an interesting but important distinction I'm going to talk about on this particular hot take. The Supreme Court was operating basically as a lower level court here, as a lower level appellate court, and not as their Supreme Court. And they don't like doing that. They think the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals should have done its job. They think the trial court judge should have done his job, and they should have all issued injunctions, and they should have stopped the planes. And when they didn't, this is why we got a 1 a.m. in the morning 4 weeks ago ruling by the United States Supreme Court on an emergency basis. This now keeps the injunction in place longer. Same 7-2. Same arguments by Alito and Thomas. Oh, we don't have jurisdiction because they jumped the gun. The plaintiffs, they moved too quickly. They wanted the courts to move quicker than they can. And what was the rush? And the majority reminded the dissent that what the rush was, that Donald Trump was rushing people onto planes in the middle of the night and refused to commit to not flying them to El Salvador during the pendency of the court proceedings. And that's all the Supreme Court wants. And that's all that they've ruled for now. You are not, Trump administration, to continue to fly planes to foreign black ops prisons and ferry people away from their due process rights until we have a chance to get our hearts and minds and arms around the substance of the decision, the merits of the decision about whether you're supposed to be using the Alien Enemies Act, if it's been properly triggered or not. They made sure they said, and I'm going to read to you, it's a very short opinion, but I'll read it to you. They made sure they said, we're not making the ruling on the Alien Enemies Act now, but you're also not going to force our hand to do that earlier than we want to by continuing to fly these planes. And so they said, here's the takeaway. Here's the key takeaway points for the decision. The injunction grounds the planes. Donald Trump cannot use the Alien Enemies Act to deport people that way until the Supreme Court makes its ultimate ruling, which won't be in the next couple of days. It's going to be sometime in the next term that starts in the first week of October, while they are sending it back to the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals that sits over Texas. It actually resides in New Orleans, for the Fifth Circuit to do its job. They actually said, you did not do your job, Fifth Circuit. You were supposed to grant that injunction and not force us to do it at 1 o'clock in the morning. How embarrassing. And so they've sent it with instructions back to the Fifth Circuit to do full briefing, do oral argument, and don't kick the case because you say there's no jurisdiction, because to talk about this egg chicken problem. The federal trial judge in Texas was slow-footing this. Well, we'll get around to it one day. I believe the Trump administration isn't going to fly planes, even though there's no order in place. And the ACLU was apoplectic. They said, are you kidding me? Well, we have evidence from inside that they're on the planes right now, which the Supreme Court cited, by the way, in their opinion. So they ran to the Fifth Circuit, and the Fifth Circuit, oh, you came here too soon. This is like Goldilocks. Too hot, too cold, not right. Oh, you showed up too quick. You should have given the trial court judge more time, no jurisdiction. They said, what? They ran to the Supreme Court, U.S. Supreme Court, and they got their injunction there. And the Supreme Court looked down and said, what is going on below? Why do we have to enter the injunction? But they have. So now it's been sent to the Fifth Circuit with instructions. Take on the substantive issue on the merits of Alien Enemies Act. Get it briefed, get an oral argument, issue your opinion so we can decide whether we're going to take it up here. We know they're going to take it at the U.S. Supreme Court, but they want it to percolate, as that word came up recently, percolate at the lower level courts before it gets to the Supreme Court, which is the ultimate arbiter on these issues. That's what's happened. Now, the only thing that is a little bit hinky, a little bit weird, but not weird, is Kavanaugh. Kavanaugh said, I agree with the injunction. 7-2, I'm in favor. I'm on that side. But I want the case right now. I think we should grant the writ of certiorari to bring the appeal up right now. Forget about the Fifth Circuit. Bring it to us right now, and we'll make the ultimate ruling. Now, some people might think, oh, that's good. He wants to get to the heart of the matter quicker. Yeah. But he is a pro-Trump, pro-executive branch guy. So if he wants this decision to be made quicker, he's already in the bag to rule in favor of Donald Trump and to against the wishes of 4 different federal judges, which he cites. 4 different federal judges, Hellerstein, Rodriguez in Texas, Colorado, New York, and also in Maryland. He's saying, I'll do it. He's going to side with Donald Trump. He's going to find the Alien Enemies Act was properly invoked. We can't question it. They are foreign terrorist organizations that trend to Aragua, the narco terrorist gang, criminal gang, because Donald Trump says it is. You know, he conjured up this war footing. We know it's a phony, wag the dog, but Kavanaugh is going to buy it. And so are 3 others. So he's going to have 4 votes. And he's like, let's get here quick. Let's get here quick. Let me read to you about how the things that indicate to me that the Supreme Court is not happy that they had to intervene, but they had no choice. On page 2, they go through what happened between the 18th and 19th of April. Evidence now on the record. This is on page 2. Although not all before us on the 18th of April when they issued the temporary restraining order emergency at 1 o'clock in the morning, suggests that the government had in fact taken steps on the afternoon of April 18 towards removing the detainees under the Alien Enemies Act, including transporting them from their detention facility to an airport and later returning them to the facility. Had the detainees been removed from the United States to the custody of a foreign sovereign on April 19, the government may have argued, as it has previously argued, that no U.S. court had jurisdiction to order relief. In other words, we didn't know it, but we were a lot closer to having a major problem than we thought when we even entered the injunction, because Donald Trump had already loaded the planes. They were in their upright locked positions, if you know what I mean. The tray table was up for these detainees. The Fifth Circuit, now they're going to chastise the Fifth Circuit on page 2 over to 3. The Fifth Circuit dismissed the detainees' appeal for lack of jurisdiction and denied their motion for injunction pending appeal as premature on the grounds that the detainees gave the district court only 42 minutes. We now construe the application as a writ of certiorari from the decision of the Fifth. The Fifth erred on page 3 in dismissing the detainees' appeal for the lack of jurisdiction. Appellate courts have jurisdiction to review interlocutory orders that have the practical effect of refusing an injunction. Here, the district court's inaction, the trial court's level inaction, not for 42 minutes, but for 14 hours and 28 minutes, had the practical effect of refusing an injunction to detainees facing an imminent threat of severe irreparable harm, being sent to El Salvador and having this administration say they can't get them back. We vacate the judgment of the Court of Appeals. And then they talk about the Fifth Amendment rights. And they also say that the 24 hours before removal, without giving the detainees any information about how to exercise due process rights, surely does not pass muster as an appropriate Fifth Amendment due process requirement. See, Donald Trump's all hot and bothered, right? He almost cried in a recent posting. Well, the Supreme Court's not going to let me deport criminals unless I give them hearings, and that's going to take years. They're in favor of criminals being released into the wild. No. All of these people will remain in detention. Even Abrego Garcia, if he gets sent back from El Salvador, will end up in U.S. detention. they just stay there under U.S. supervision and administration until they get before a federal judge and the United States Supreme Court ultimately rules. That's all we want. That's all that's required, commanded by the U.S. Constitution, for which Donald Trump swore an oath of allegiance. And so for him to cry, I have to give them due process. Yes. How many times? This is like idiot in chief. How many times does the Supreme Court have to tell you, you have to give them a hearing and proper notice? And it has to comport with their understanding of constitutional due process. Yes. If you want to get them out, this is the way to get them out, through a process. And to be clear, I'll gladly wave at them leaving on the airplane if it is proven through a process with due process with a federal judge administrating it that they are members of Tren de Aragua, or they've committed crimes, or whatever the other rationale is. Now, they go out of their way on the bottom of page 4 over to 5 to say, to be clear, we decide today only that the detainees are entitled to more notice than they were given on April 18th, and we grant temporary injunctive relief to preserve our jurisdiction while the question of what notice is due is adjudicated. We did not on April 19th, which is the 1 a.m. decision, nor today address the underlying merits of the parties' claims regarding the legality of removals under the AEA. We recognize the significance of the government's national security interest, as well as the necessity that such interest be pursued in a manner consistent with the Constitution. So we want the lower courts to address this expeditiously. We already have several rulings against Donald Trump. He's running 4 rulings against him, only 1 in favor of him in the proper use of the Alien Enemies Act. It's getting teed up, but they want it to come from the 5th Circuit, from the 2nd Circuit, from the 4th Circuit, combine them, come up to the United States Supreme Court. So we'll be talking about this case in October. Alito jumps off sides, but he did the same thing in the 7-2 decision against him in a month ago at 1 a.m. in the same case. Jurisdiction. He's all about jurisdiction. I cannot agree with the decision of my brethren because there's no jurisdiction here, because this should have been left with the 5th Circuit. And who cares? Totally ignoring. Who cares if they get sent to El Salvador or get sent, to El Salvador? Who cares about due process? See, the 7 out of the 9 are like, we need to preserve our own jurisdiction in order to ensure that due process is given. To Alito and to Thomas, who cares? We'll fix that problem later. Maybe those 300 or 500 or 1,000 won't have any rights, but that's just you're just quibbling over human beings here. So listen, we're going to continue to follow it all. Next step is it goes back to the 5th Circuit. I'll let you know who the 5th Circuit panel is, the 3-judge panel, because that matters. I'm sure because it leans all the way to the right, it's going to be something in favor of Donald Trump and the use of the Alien Enemies Act and whether due process was properly given. Then it's going to end up at the Supreme Court sometime in October, and it's going to be a fight. You got 4, I'm sure, Alito, Thomas, Gorsuch, and Kavanaugh, who are going to rule for Donald Trump, that the Alien Enemies Act is properly invoked, that the Tren de Aragua criminal gang is foreign terrorist organization. We had a predatory incursion nobody knew about, and they can all be sent out, but with due process. I'm sure there's 4 votes for that. The question is what is Roberts and what is Amy Coney Barrett going to do? And we'll continue to follow it right here on Legal AF. Thanks for being here. Hit the subscribe button. Come over to Legal AF, the Substack, where we have posted this very opinion for you to read in the flesh under SCOTUS AF. So come over there and subscribe as well. Until my next reporting, I'm Michael Popok. Can't get your fill of Legal AF? Me neither. That's why we formed the Legal AF Substack. Every time we mention something in a hot take, whether it's a court filing or a oral argument, come over to the Substack. You'll find the court filing and the oral argument there, including a daily roundup that I do called, wait for it, Morning AF. What else? All the other contributors from Legal AF are there as well. We got some new reporting. We got interviews. We got ad-free versions of the podcast and hot takes. Where? Legal AF on Substack. Come over now to free subscribe.